what I learned is that capitalism is not a benign system, brothers and sisters. It goes after everything. It leaves not a social program in place. It leaves not a tree standing. It leaves not a job or a home or a child feeling secure. It is a ruthless, self-devouring system that will take us and the planet down with it if we don't fight back, if we don't rein it in. If you want to see what our worst future might be, just look at what's happening in Eastern Europe. We can see the future, and it doesn't work. The loss is also in the West. Capitalism with a human face has become capitalism in your face. They no longer have to worry about competing. They no longer have to tell their workers, you've got it better than in the communist countries. They no longer have to do that. They no longer have to tell the third world countries. They're saying, you don't like it? It's too bad. This is what it is. They're going for everything, and they want everything. There's only one thing that the ruling classes of history have ever wanted, and that's everything. Socialism was overthrown not because it failed, but because it succeeded, at least in part. That is, siege socialism created a society that survived and that was ready to move to consumerism, a dialectic that undermined itself. I think we also then have to pay attention to human nature. We must realize that people are a lot more complex. I remember talking to the East German ambassador in Washington, the GDR, just as things were collapsing. The last reception they had there, I said to him, why did you make such junky cars? Those two-cylinder putt-putt cars that everybody scorned. He said, well, we didn't want to put it into cars because environmentally they're so wasteful, they're so costly. We thought if we built up a good a good, rational, efficient, low-cost, effective mass transit system, low polluting, that would be the way people would go. And we wouldn't give them such desirable cars. And we were wrong because he said Germans like their machines, I guess. Well, it's not Germans, it's Pakistanis, it's Americans, it's Latin Americans, it's all over the world. The automobile, they're crazy for it. See, if you give people the choice between a sane, rational, clean mass transit system or the automobile with its personal empowerment, its privacy, its status, its instant mobility, they go for the automobile. And this is what was happening. So we've got to understand that people often don't act the way we want. He made a very revealing statement. He said, we thought that if we built a good society, we would have good people. But that's not necessarily true. Well, it's debatable whether that was a good society, indeed. But the point is a very interesting one, that we have to look at the complexities of people, that people have a tremendous capacity for discontent, for wanting more and more, that human organization is a very hard and difficult and often self-defeating thing, that the more you organize it, often the standard operating procedure often leaves you dysfunctional for other kinds of things, that there are particular individuals waiting for their opportunities to be as rapacious and exploiting and victimizing as they can be. They are worse than any creature in the jungle, because the creatures in the jungle don't prey and kill just for the fun of it. Human nature, I'm one of the few Marxists in the world that says human nature has to be looked at. I also say it exists. The usual view is, well, I don't know what you mean. When you start talking about human nature, you see, the conservatives have so used human nature as a concept to justify the horrible social arrangements that we do have, that we on the left have had this silly reaction, which is to say, it doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? If human beings don't have a nature, we're the only entity in the whole universe that does. All things have a nature. This lectern has a nature. This microphone has a nature, not a very good one. This plant has a nature. We all have a nature. Oh, we're more like clay. We're very malleable. Well, even clay has a nature. You can spread it just so far. You got to keep it moist. It can crack. It can do things. There are limits. And we have to then have expectations and understandings of these things and not be so naively enamored with our ideology as to not look at what people are actually doing and capable of. I think human nature is horrible. I think it's terrible. I think human beings, if you read history, it's just horrible. It's just horrible and disgusting and horrifying. The atrocities, the murder, the torture, the plunder, the madness of it. I mean, you can't read history without coming away feeling a very, very odd feeling about your own species, especially the male gender in it, It's really amazing. They're horrible creatures. The women applaud, the men sit silently. But that's all the more reason. That's all the more reason why we need strong political organization. That's all the more reason why we need a liberating ideology. That's all the more reason why we need democracy. And democracy, we also have to keep power out of the hands of these avaricious ones, especially. Is Marxism irrelevant? Is it the bankruptcy of Marxism? No, Marxism is a system of analysis that critiques existing capitalism and imperialism. It has relatively little to say about socialism. In the communist countries, Marxism was doled out like a catechism. It didn't even relate to their lives. It was like us studying feudalism. It had to do with a different set of social relations than the one they had, although they were desperately in need of a critical theory of their own about their system, as I tried to, in a very sketchy way, map out here today. I mean, I've tried to do an awful lot. I mean, go the whole range of the thing, and I know I haven't succeeded all that much in any of it, but anyway, you get what I'm doing. We need a strong alternative movement to move both against the Republicrats and Demokins, and not just locally, but nationally and internationally. We need more militancy and resistance. What can we do about it, if that's going to be the question? I'm going to answer it right now, so don't ask it. There are no easy answers. What are you willing to do? We can all do a little more, a lot more than we are now doing. Just look at the tables around the hall and sign up and get active. And finally, remember this, that history, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, history never ends. The last page is never written. History is always being rewritten. And its best passages are not written by the princes or the presidents or the prime ministers or the popes. The best passages are written by the people. For all their faults, the people are all we have. In fact, we are they. Thank you. Bye. Yeah. The question is, on what basis did Andrei Sakharov not like the peace movement? Sakharov, from the same perspective, I would say Ronald Reagan wouldn't like the peace movement. He had a totally pro-Reagan, anti-Soviet approach regarding the arms race, the East-West conflict. The Vietnam War, he thought, was a good war that the U.S. was involved in, and it was sorry they didn't win it and all that stuff. But that's not known about Sakharov. I wanted to say something about human nature. I said that human nature is rotten and horrible. It's also grand and beautiful and mediocre and all those things. I mean, all that whole range of things are our nature. That's what we got to deal with, that whole big messy splash. Yeah, so questions here? Yeah. Wants me to comment on what appears to be a Russian imperialism in Eastern Europe and Afghanistan. Well, if you mean imperialism means the expropriation of the land, labor, resources, and technology of one country by a ruling class of another country, it wasn't imperialism, because they brought in aid and they brought in stuff, and it was actually much more advantageous to Eastern Europe. I would not call that imperialism. I would call that hegemony. That is, the Russians were hegemonic over Eastern Europe. They really wanted them, and that hegemony got tighter as the Cold War heated up, and got the more uptight they got, the more they clamped down. In Afghanistan, I believe the Russians went in on the right side. They went on the side of a left military against a right-wing mercenary force from Afghanistan, a feudal force. The feudal tribesmen and those people who had taken up arms because the Kabul government was calling for the equality of women, land reform, education of children, all these kind of things which they thought were just utterly horrible. And I think the Russians went in on the socially progressive side in Afghanistan, and the CIA went in on the retrograde side, and the retrograde side has won, and there's been terrible killings, and you can see what's happening now. They're just massacring, and they're still fighting and killing each other. A bunch of fanatical